Compliance. Compliance is the tendency for a blood vessel to stretch and hold blood as the blood pressure increases. Okay, this is not going to further increase the blood pressure. What this is going to do is lower the blood pressure. Remember that blood volume determines blood pressure. So another way to say that in this case is the amount of blood going to the heart determines how hard the heart is going to beat. Or how hard the heart will contract. If you remember, we covered that whenever we looked at intrinsic regulation. So in our example here, I want to draw these hearts and look at the size of the blood vessels. Okay, whenever we look at compliance, we are not looking at the heart stretching, we're looking at blood vessels stretching. So let's start with this heart here. This is the heart, and we're going to give it an inferior vena cava. This inferior vena cava is this size, and then we're going to draw this other heart. We're going to draw it larger, and then the vena cava is going to be smaller. Okay. Remember that compliance is going to be the tendency for a blood vessel wall to stretch and hold blood. So you can see the picture here to the left. The vena cava is going to have an increased compliance. And what it does is it holds blood. So that means that decreased blood goes to the heart, or decreased venous return. Decreased venous return means less blood goes to the heart. That means the heart does not stretch and it does not recoil with a greater force. So this is going to give this heart a lower blood pressure. In our picture here on the right, we have a decreased compliance. Remember that compliance is the stretch of the blood vessel. So we see that this blood vessel is not stretched, it is constricted. This is going to increase venous return. And that is going to, in turn, raise the blood pressure. Okay, the reason that it raises the blood pressure is it increases venous return. That means more blood goes to the heart. The heart is going to stretch and recoil with a greater force, giving it a higher blood pressure. Okay, most of the time when people look at these pictures, they think, oh, this increase in compliance here, because the blood vessel is larger, it's going to give you a larger diameter, a larger radius, and more blood goes to the heart. So these look like the pictures are kind of off from what we've talked about earlier. But let's look and see how our blood is and where our blood is in our body. So let me erase this a little bit. And I want us to remember that the blood in your heart and your blood vessels is a closed system. So whenever we look at the heart is going to pump the blood into the aorta. The aorta is going to carry the blood to the muscular arteries, through the arterioles, into capillaries. So here we're going to draw our little capillary network here. And the capillaries are going to give the blood to the venules, and that's going to go to the medium-sized veins and the large-sized veins, and those are going to take the blood back to the heart. Okay, notice that blood cannot enter or exit this section, or blood cannot enter or exit this system. So that's what I mean by you have a closed system. So blood is either going to be in a heart, an artery, a capillary, or a vein. So let's say artery here. We'll even label these. Okay, you cannot increase the amount of blood in an artery, or an artery can only increase, it's only going to have like a very small amount of compliance. So we can have our little increase in our artery here, but that's not going to be a huge difference. Okay, the capillaries. The capillaries have no compliance at all. The capillaries cannot stretch to hold more blood. So the capillaries have no compliance. The veins The veins have 24 times the compliance of arteries. That means that they're able to hold the blood. If they hold the blood, that means that the blood is not going to the heart. That means that the heart is not going to stretch and recoil with a greater force, that's going to decrease the blood pressure. Okay, whenever veins are holding the blood, they're known as blood reservoirs. Veins are called blood reservoirs because they're able to hold the blood and send less blood to the heart. Okay, so let's look and see what happens if we're going to change the diameter of the vein. We're going to say this vein here is stretched, so therefore its compliance is going to increase. Remember that the artery and the capillary are not going to be able to stretch near this amount. Well, if the vein stretches this amount, look at how much blood it's holding. If it's holding that much blood, that means that the heart is not going to be getting more blood. It gets actually less blood, and that decreases the blood pressure. In this drawing here, we're going to give our veins a smaller diameter. That means they are not holding as much blood. That's going to be a decrease in compliance. So where is the blood going to go? Well, the blood cannot go and be stored in an artery. The blood cannot go and be stored in a capillary. So the blood is going to go to the heart. The heart is going to stretch to accommodate that extra blood. Whenever the heart stretches to accommodate extra blood, then it's going to recoil with a greater force, and that's going to increase the blood pressure. So we're going to say that in our green little line here, we have decreased compliance. That is going to send more blood to the heart. That would increase our venous return. That makes the heart stretch and recoil with a greater force. That scared me. And if the heart recoils with a greater force, that increases the blood pressure. So that's a description of compliance.